So what are we trying to do? First of all, we bring into the classroom real-life cases. Each case study, if you like, is prepared by somebody who has lived the case. That's important. These are not academic exercises. These are not written by somebody who has never been to a particular country or a particular site to which this case refers. Each case has a given structure with the background information, policy options, and all of that. We then use those cases in teaching, and I won't go into all the details. If you like me to talk about the details, exactly how we carry out the classroom activities, I can do that, but that may be more detail than you care to have. But the two issues here. One, we're trying to bring the real cases into the classroom because we can't afford to bring the students to where the things are happening. We actually managed to do that in the case of Tanzania by bringing some Cornell students out to work with Tanzanian students, but that's an exception. And the other thing we're trying to do is to instill this mindset. Say, all right, you actually have 15 minutes to present to the group of students that you're presenting to, and you've got a few days to prepare for it, so that we can get them into this mindset. So what can I find that I can use in this limited time period that I have available? First time I tried this was at the University of Copenhagen some 3 years ago. It was before the cases were complete. We had some rough draft of a few cases. And halfway through the course, this group of students came up and said, could you please give some lectures? I decided I wasn't going to give any lectures because, I don't know about you, but for me, listening to a 75-minute lecture kind of gets a little boring, unless it's a very good, which means I shouldn't speak for too long, right? So the students came out and said, could you give some lectures? And said, why would you want lectures? Because we are tired. We want to relax while you are talking. These were total immersion. Was a total immersion course. We started at 8 in the morning and run until about 1, and then they prepared for the next day in the afternoon. So they really were tired. So anyway, but the other argument they had was, look, these cases are very specific, and they are very specific to a particular situation. So they say we need lectures to kind of bring it all together. Fair enough. So we did that. So what we have now. What I use at Cornell, I use 7 lectures on 7 different topics just to bring things together. What we try to do in the classroom is to create a learning environment. Nobody laughs at anybody. Sometimes we laugh with people, we never laugh at people. It's a learning environment. People should not wait until they have the absolute pearl of wisdom before they speak. They should participate. It's very much of a participatory, involved kind of approach. And one of the things we stress very much is that we don't specify the problem in terms of its solution. The problem is not lack of distribution of vitamin A pills, because if we decide that's the problem, then we have also fixed ourselves on the solution. So the problem is not specified in terms of its solution. That leaves open the options of the kinds of solutions that can be pursued. We pay a lot of attention to stakeholder analysis because when I got my economics training many years ago, we didn't talk very much about stakeholder analysis. We were going for first best solutions to policy problems. The most cost-effective or the most efficient, whichever way we were going, that's what we would tell governments to do. And governments, of course, usually didn't do it. So we said, they're stupid. No, they were not stupid. But there were so many stakeholder groups, there were so many lobbying groups, there was such a pressure on this government before that decision was made. So you were lucky if they got a third or fourth or fifth best solution. And again, this is something IFPRI has done a lot of work on. But what we're trying to instill in the minds of students is that you have to look at the stakeholder situation. You have to understand the importance and the relative power of each of those stakeholder groups. Because if you don't understand that, your advice to the government will only be useful to them if you are extremely lucky. So the stakeholder analysis is a very big deal, both in the cases. Each case has quite a bit of discussion of that, and also in the classroom presentation and discussion. And then, of course, we are arguing that you need to tailor the advice. You need to tailor the advice to the audience. You need to tailor the advice to the situation. And this brings in not only economics, but ethics, of course, as well. And, of course, the whole political economy question that surrounds this. Now, for those of you who've been working in this food policy research area for a long time, this may all seem obvious. But check around the various universities and see how many universities actually are focusing on these kinds of things. We try to cover the full spectrum of what I call the global food systems in the cases and in the textbook that I'm almost done writing together with a couple of colleagues. So we look at human health and nutrition policies, we look at food security policies, we look at the whole process, the whole food system, all the way to trade and globalization policies, and we have a set of case studies on ethical aspects as well. So what have we done so far? Well, we have 60 cases on the web, open access. The whole idea is to make this material available for developing country universities and anybody else who wants to use it, including, of course, universities in the United States and Europe if they want to use it. We use it at Cornell. But the idea is that this will be available to anybody who wants to download it. And the address is right there. I left some cards on the table out there that has the address as well. We have also published these cases in a 3-volume book, and those volumes have just come out. They came out in February of this year, and again we have display copies on the table out there. We also have the cases available on CD, and they are actually available at a price considerably below the value, namely free. I simply had 750 copies of the CD made available, and anybody who wants copies for education, for teaching purposes, can say so. The reason for the CDs, of course, is that if you ever try to download a whole bunch of stuff from the internet using a phone connection or whatever else, as long as it's not broadband, it takes a lot of patience. So by distributing CDs to developing country students and instructors, we thought that would be the way to go. We have distributed about 400 copies of the book, of the 3-volume set, to developing countries and instructors in the libraries and so on. The 7 lectures are available on DVD as well, again, so they don't have to download it if they don't want to. We have cases in progress. We have about 10 or so that are currently being either written or revised. And as I mentioned earlier, if I could just get my act together, I would finish the textbook. It's coming, it's coming. That's what I said some time ago too, but it is coming. So we tested this approach in a number of universities, Copenhagen University, Wageningen in the United States, at Cornell about 3 times, in Tanzania and a few other places. I just came back from China very recently, where we held 1 or 3 regional workshops. The other 2 were in Bangladesh and Uganda, and each of those workshops included 25. A few ended up not coming, but we invited 25 instructors, professors or lecturers or instructors from each of those 3 regions, that is South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, and East and Southeast Asia. So we ended up reaching 67 instructors in 57 universities in those 3 regions. We spent time with them going over the process that we're proposing, the social entrepreneurship approach to teaching. We met a lot of enthusiasm in the 2 Asian regions, much less so in Sub-Saharan Africa. In South Asia, I got emails back from most of the participants saying, we're already using these cases, we're already using this approach in our teaching, which of course was those emails I really like to get, because what we're trying to do is to get it out there. In the case of sub-Saharan Africa, there was much more hesitation, basically saying, look, teaching to us is like paying income tax. If we have to do it, we'll do it as painlessly as possible, because we don't really get paid very much for it. We don't get any recognition for teaching, so we just get it over with. And then we can hopefully get a consulting job with the World Bank or some other institution where we can make a little money on the side. That was a bit depressing. Now, not all 25 or 24 of the African participants said that, but enough of them said that. So I think we got a real problem with lack of motivation. It's really not appreciated. So you teach, so you teach. And of course that goes along very well with the way that many of the African countries and the international donors have treated the universities in Africa. We basically permitted the universities to go down the drain. And we pulled out some of the research activities and put them into semi-independent research institutions. It was probably the worst thing we could ever do to these universities. And if you travel around to these African universities, many of them are in terrible shape. So anyway, that's a bit of a sideline, but it was kind of a response. I was on a committee for the Inter-Academic Council where we looked at some of these things, and again, the conclusion was very clear. The universities were doing quite well in the late 60s and the first half of the 70s, and then somehow the governments and the international donors lost interest, and the universities were not doing too well. Some of them are coming back. Makere in Uganda is beginning to come back, and Suresh Babu knows more about some of the other universities, but it's still, there's a terrible lack of institutional support to teaching in many of those universities. There is a lack of teaching material, and that of course was one of the reasons why we decided to develop this material. Hopefully that would be helpful. I mentioned earlier that I'm doing this in collaboration with IFPRI. Joachim von Braun is one of the collaborators. Also, we are working very closely with Copenhagen University and with Wageningen University in the Netherlands. So this is a collaborative effort. And Joachim, you may want to say more about how that fits in with the Open University and so on. But we have an international advisory committee because the four of us, Joachim, the Copenhagen University representative, Wageningen representative, by the way, is Ari Kuyvenhoven, who used to be on the board of IFPRI, and myself, of course, we are all white males. And if you believe in diversity and you believe that somehow developing countries ought to have a say in what we're developing for them, at least you ought to have some input from them. So we have an International Advisory Council, which consists of 2 people from Latin America, 2 from Africa, 2 from Asia, and 1 from the former Soviet Union. And we have met with that council, I believe, Joachim, 3 times maybe, 2 or 3 times. And in between, of course, they're looking at the cases, they're reviewing some of the cases, they're trying to keep us on track so that we don't end up off track, if you like. These 60 cases are prepared by 56 case authors and all been peer-reviewed. We've used 102 peer reviewers. I have no friends left in this world because every colleague and friend was asked to review 1 or more cases. And of course, because they're nice people, they tended to do so. But there was also this last sentence in the letter, don't ask me to do any more, please. They didn't say that, but you know what I mean. When you get these manuscripts, you have some other things that you would rather do. But we treat each case the same way as a manuscript is treated when it goes to a referee journal. So it goes to reviewers, it then comes back for revision, then it goes to a professional editor, who, by the way, also used to work for IFPRI. And then it goes to a format, and then it goes on the web. So it's a fairly complete system. So what are we going to do next? We're going to continue to add cases, maybe 5 or so a year or so, if we can find the money to do it. It's actually quite inexpensive. I was once told what Harvard Business School pays for a case. And we can probably do all 60 cases roughly for what it cost them to prepare one. The discrepancy in cost was incredible, and of course they're much better than ours. So we are going to add, and we're going to update cases. I'm going to complete that textbook with my colleagues. We're going to expand access. We're going to try to get this out, promote this. And Klaus, I'm going to need your help in communications here so we can really get this out, not to 56 universities, but to 156 and maybe more, because the whole purpose of doing this, as I said earlier, is to get it out there. One of the things we're looking at is how we can strengthen networks, initially with these instructors with whom we met, but hopefully enter into other networks, including some of the IFPRI network activities that you're doing, and hopefully we can talk about exactly how to do that. And again, there's no hidden agenda here. I'm not getting a percentage. I'm not getting any monetary rewards from this, but I'm getting other rewards. Every time a new university adds these cases, I say, wonderful. It wasn't a waste of my time, or the time of the many other people who worked on it. What we're going to do, and this idea came up in these workshops, what we're going to do is to try this approach, try it on government officials, to have a short course, maybe a week or even less, with government officials, people who actually advise decision makers or make decisions themselves, to see if it will work for them as well and not just for university level students. And the first test case of that is going to be in Zimbabwe, where one of the participants in the Uganda meeting said when he went home to Zimbabwe on his way out, he said, look, would you mind if I try this in government officials? And I said, of course not, that would be wonderful. And he's since written and told me that he's going to do that. We'll see if it works for them. And then I end with a question. Anything else you want us to do? This is a good time to tell us. Thank you very much.